really, sorry. Good morning, and I admire all your courage in braving the elements. I hope no one was hit by the occasional snowflake in the district. As someone who was born in Maine and grew up in Massachusetts, this is not what we would call a snowstorm. But I guess it works for here. First of all, let me thank Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and her team. This is the third year of a monthly breakfast series that has focused on the issues of women's empowerment. We've talked about women in the political process, women in the military, women in political campaigns, the right to vote, how that's exercised, family law, a whole variety of interesting topics. And over the course of now almost, well, this is the first of a three-year series, we've probably had in excess of 1,000 people like all of you involved in these topics. And it's resulted in a marvelous network that has helped the sophistication of IFES's work in this important space. The International Foundation for Electoral Systems provides technical assistance to election management bodies around the world, particularly in countries that are transitioning to democracy. I consider election management bodies as having a simple mission. It's called 100% voter participation. Everyone who can vote should vote. Everyone who is eligible to vote should have barriers taken away so as to allow their participation. If you look at global voting registration statistics produced by International IDEA, a think tank out of Stockholm, you find that while a majority of the world's population are women, only about 30% of women are actually on voter registration lists. And as we go country to country, particularly in some countries that are more conservative or have different beliefs, we find it more and more difficult to include women in the political process. And that becomes one of IFES's missions, and hence the important role that Gabrielle and her team do at IFES, working with election commissions around the world as to how you take barriers away, how you have more women in leadership. And for many women, their first time in political life is working as a poll worker. That's the first time for many women in many societies they've worked outside the home. And for some women, including a member of our board, who's the chairman of the Bosnia-Herzegovina Election Commission, it becomes their way into public life and a professional career in the public administration of elections. What we're going to talk about today is something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is the leadership of women in the political process as candidates, as campaign managers, as professionals. And while that whole topic is very important, my role today is also to sort of raise a warning flag as to what's going on in our digital economy, in our digital space, where speech is anonymous. What we see in the digital world is harassment, harassment particularly of women candidates, women campaign managers, women professionals in the process. This goes beyond verbal abuse and into psychological abuse. We had a presidential candidate in Rwanda, which I don't consider a bastion of democracy, but the woman filed and ran for office, and her image was photoshopped and sourced back to multiple countries in the neighborhood that had her in a variety of graphic poses, none of which was her. We know of invasions of personal digital items, of photo libraries, and how that stuff is shopped around. This whole space is saying to women, you've got to be more courageous than just knocking down the traditional barriers, because new, more invasive, more personally assaulting barriers are part of what we're going to be tracking as part of violence against women in the electoral process. And if you really want to understand the extent, and not in public life, I'll just point you to Wired magazine. This story, Me Living Was How I Was Going to Beat Him, chronicles a 5-year digital harassment that started as a social innocent thing, I would say, but just got out of control. And in presentation of the suit, of the civil suit, the law firm prepared a 10-foot long calendar of episodes going back and forth on digital space of harassment of this woman and her family. So, you know, and this is private information. Her story is private. When you're in public life, as we all know, everything you do is public. So there's a whole new complexity to the challenge and to the courage that women, as they move forward, become campaign managers, become candidates, become campaign chairs, become political leaders, are going to be challenged with. And so with that happy note, happy weather, I'm going to turn it over to Gabrielle to introduce our panel. Our third panelist is en route, and so when she comes, she will make an entrance. Gabrielle?
Apparently the snow makes it hard to park on Capitol Hill, but Don is about to join us. So as Bill said, we are here today to talk about what is bringing women into politics here in the U.S. and internationally, and also what challenges they face. Are these challenges common between us and our different spheres of the globe, and those challenges that are distinct around the world? So you have the bio sheets in front of you. I won't take up too much of your time, but we are so excited to have this extraordinary panel with us today that I will introduce them for you. So to my right is Patricia Russo. She is the Executive Director of the Women's Campaign School at Yale University and one of its founders, as I just discovered. Patty is a nationally respected leader who focuses on the quality of life for women in Connecticut and the United States. She is, of course, the Executive Director of Women's Campaign School at Yale and a member of the National Leadership Team of Political Parity, which is a bipartisan initiative dedicated to increasing the number of women in elective office. She has spent 23 years as a member of Connecticut's Permanent Commission on the Status of Women and 8 years as its chair. She's now Commissioner Emerita on behalf of the agency. And she's also a member of the Commission on the Status of Women's 4th Congressional District Advisory. So thank you so much to Patty for traveling down to join us here today. Further to the right, we have June Langston DeHart, who is a partner of Federal Government Affairs and Public Policy with Manat. June is a DC problem solver. I like this description. She solves problems to a variety of clients, both federal here and international. She represents clients in policy-making proceedings before the U.S. Congress, the White House, federal agencies, and international organizations. She has advised CEOs and boards of directors on federal policies. Her clients include the United States as well as international businesses, states, local governments, and other public entities, foreign governments, trade associations, as well as nonprofits. Previously, June was managing partner of Manat's DC office and co-chair of the federal government practice group. We're also happy to say that she's a member of our board. So thank you. And the vacant seat, not vacant for long, will soon be occupied by Donna Brazil, who will be joining us. She is the founder and managing director of Brazil and Associates. She's a veteran political strategist and currently an adjunct professor, an author, a columnist, a frequent face on the televised political commentary shows, as well as a vice chair of voter registration and participation at the DNC, formerly interim national chair at the DNC, as well as former chair of the DNC's Voting Rights Institute. She is a passionate advocate of supporting young people's participation in politics, and we're very happy to have her with us today momentarily. And we will be joined later this morning by the Congresswoman herself, and we will interrupt proceedings at that point to let her say a few words. Because we are live streaming this morning, we would ask all of our panelists as well as our speakers or our question askers to use a microphone and to speak clearly into it. So with that, we're going to get started. We'll have a few comments from our panelists and then open the floor to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Gabrielle's one of our rock star graduates at the Women's Campaign School at Yale, and the whole reason why I'm here, so thank you so much. I also wanted to thank Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, a Yale alum, so I feel like I am in such great company. Bill, a pleasure to meet you. You know, we need good men too, right, in our movement. June, a pleasure to meet you.
So good
I
to
love a
meet
girl
you.
from Mississippi. So I am a prop speaker. Here's our brochure. Please take one. I don't want to take them home with me. The Women's Campaign School at Yale is a nonpartisan, issue-neutral political campaign training program, both for women who are interested in running for public office as well as women who are interested in campaign management. Because guess what? We need more women in both arenas. We were created in 1992. That was the first year of a woman. Most of you weren't born at that point. We had a phenomenal year, I'm here to assure you. We had an amazing year in 1992. We had all these amazing women running for Congress. And many of those women won that year. And then 1993 happened, and it was as if 1992 never happened. So a group of dynamo women got together in Connecticut and said, you know, we think we need a campaign school for women because there are issues and challenges that women face when they run for office or when they're campaign managers that men never have to worry about. And so after a year of, you know, working on a proposal, we went to Yale University and the law school and said, we have this dream of a 5-day intensive for women. It's not public policy, that's all hands-on, nuts and bolts training, so that women can skew women to succeed, to run and win. And 10 to 20% of the women who attend our school every year are women of the world. So we have an international component to our school. So in addition to women coming from all parts of our country, we have 20% of our women come from other countries, which I think adds a richness and texture to our school where women can come together and really see and appreciate that we have more in common than not. Back in November 2016, right after the results of the presidential race, we started getting many more calls and emails from women who were crestfallen, who were mad, who were just in shock and numb and wanted to run or wanted to run a campaign or wanted to get involved in some way. And so that was kind of the beginning of our new fabulous wave of this incredible increase of women's participation and interest in coming to our 5-day intensive. So then after the march in January, our phone literally blew up. I mean, we started getting, on Sunday of that weekend, we started getting calls from women, and they went something like this. Hi, I'm Gina. I'm from Ohio. I'm mad. I marched. I want to run. When's your 5-day? Call me back. Okay? So Gabrielle knows me well enough to know I returned every one of those calls. And how exciting that I was doing this on a Sunday, that these women were so engaged and so excited that they wanted to know. So then I called them back. Hi, Gina. Thank you so much for calling. Where are you registered to vote? Oh, I'm not registered. But I'm mad, and I marched, and I want to run for office. Okay, Gina, do you have a pen and a pad handy? Because I'm going to tell you where you registered to vote in Akron, Ohio. Okay, that's the first. So about a third of the women who contacted us after the march were not registered to vote. A third. The second third, of course I'm registered to vote. Indignantly, she says. I said, oh, well, where'd you vote on election day? Oh, I didn't vote. You know, the two candidates, they were so similar, I just couldn't make up my mind. But I'm mad now, and I marched, and I'm going to run for office. Well, I, too, am going to save you the $65 application fee because you're just not appropriate for our 5-day intensive. The last 1/3 were actually appropriate for the school and did apply, which is why we had a record number of applications applying to the school last year. So you see what I'm saying? 2/3 of the women who contacted us were not appropriate. They're not ready to run. There's so much they need to know. We want to skew our candidates to run and win. Okay? That's what we're about. And so I gave them all a homework assignment because I love that. I gave them a homework assignment, but then I thought about it and I said, you know, they're not appropriate for a 5-day, but what do we do to capture this energy, this passion, this excitement? And so I created the Women's Campaign School at Yale, the Basics, which is a 1-day intensive, a training program for women who have a newly discovered passion for politics, but don't have the foundations or the skills to effectively launch their campaigns. So I raised the funds to do it. We've now we launched in October. I've done 4. My goal is to do 6 more throughout the country before our June session. But I'm really excited about it because I think that with all of this energy, and I don't know about all of you, but I'm still feeling it, and I can't wait for this march to happen because I know I'm going to be busy returning phone calls and responding to emails. I feel this energy. I feel this fabulous wave. We have an incredibly motivated base of women out there in this country like I've never seen before, and I'm really excited about it. I'm thrilled to be a part of it, but I know what women need, and they need to be met at their level. Okay? They need so that they're inspired, they feel supported. I think men are really great at supporting each other, okay? I talk about this a lot at the campaign school. Gosh, you know, men are just so good about supporting each other. Women, not so much. One thing that Gabrielle, I'm sure, will tell you is that what we do is we have a mentoring component to our program. So you have an amazing 5 days at our school, and we won't let you go. Because that's when we lose women out of our pipeline. You know, when women are feeling discouraged, and we've all had our moments, right? And we all know how challenging it is running for public office, the challenges and, you know, issues that women face that men don't. You know, isn't it great to have a network, a good old girls network? That's what we provide for our graduates. And I think that that mentoring component is as important as the exemplary skills that you get at the school. I'm here to say on record that I think women are going to be the story of the 2018 midterms. I'm really excited and excited for the campaign school to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patty. That's fascinating. Of all the points you raised, 2/3 aren't ready to run, maybe, but 2/3 are ready to participate. And as Bill started by saying this morning, that's where things get started, and that's no less important. And you also mentioned to me over coffee this morning, but I'd like to say this passion, this change, it's not just with Democratic women.
Right.
This is a bipartisan school, and you can ask questions about it later, but Republican women as well are fired up. So I would like to pass over now to June to talk about her experiences.
Well, good morning to all of you, and it's my pleasure to be here today. I want to thank the Congresswoman as well for joining in this wonderful discussion with the International Foundation for Electoral Systems and supporting this discussion on women's political participation in the U.S. and globally. I'm as excited as you are, and I knew it was going to be fun this morning, but now I even know it's going to be more fun listening to Patty this morning, who's one of our real experts here, along with Donna, who's been in political campaigns for, I think, most of her career. I, on the other hand, come at this from a little different perspective as a woman who's been in the political arena in and around the edges. I began my career after law school working for the United States Senate, just like all of you. I was supporting members of Congress and doing policy work, and in fact, I've spent most of my career doing policy work. But I've been at my law firm now for many years, representing clients and helping them, and my work is on a bipartisan basis. We work with Republicans, with Democrats, with the people who are going to work with us on getting good policy through the Congress, through the administration, at federal agencies on regulatory matters. So I come to this as in a little bit different perspective, but I have been in a law firm that really believes in empowering women and women's leadership, and have been involved so much in women's initiatives, in mentoring, and as Patty said, I was the head of our Washington office. I also was head of our federal practice group. So, you know, women's issues have been something that's been important to me. So I've been in and around it doing fundraising, resources, support for political candidates, women and men alike. And, you know, my first political campaign I worked for was way back before I ever went to law school, back in 1975. I also want to just acknowledge and thank Bill Sweeney and Gabrielle and Liz and others at IFES for inviting me to join you today. I was just thrilled to join the IFES board in 2015. So I've been learning a lot about their work around the world over these last few years. And I have to tell you, I'm so proud of the work they do to foster democracy and to really work for free and fair and open and transparent elections and in countries transitioning around the world. They're doing very important work. It's nonpartisan technical assistance. They're helping with elections, rule of law, civil society organizations. Governance. These are all very, very important concepts, many of which we take for granted here, but are very important in the global world. But they have a couple of really wonderful programs that help and assist disabled persons to really participate in the political process, as well as their women empowerment programs. And they specifically have one, the IFES gender program, which really helps to empower women. It's advocacy, leadership training, voter education campaigns, monitoring and reporting on electoral and political violence. So all of the things that you would expect an NGO to do around the world, they are involved in it, and they are one of the leading organizations in the world doing this kind of work. So I'm very proud to be part of that, so thank you for having me here to do that. Now, as the layman on this panel here, who comes at this from a different perspective, I actually did a little research over the weekend trying to kind of figure out my thinking on the state of women's political participation. And I actually came away fairly positive about what's going on and how things have improved, certainly since I got into this years and years ago. And I think it's a pretty good story to tell, both in the US and globally, in some ways more positive globally. Certainly there are obstacles and there's underrepresentation, but I'm excited about what's happening every day, and certainly hearing what Patty said, that was certainly my sense that women are more energized every day to be involved in the political process. Women are a growing force in this country, in the economy and in the electorate. Let's face it, women are some of the creators of business. Some of the most small businesses are created by women in this economy. 9.4 million firms are women-owned, and they're employing almost 8 million people and trillions of dollars in sales. And they own many of the privately held firms. So women in business, hiring people, are going to be a force in the economy. Welcome, Donna. It's good to see you here. And as Patty was saying, women are a large part of the electorate here in the country, not only in the population, but also in the electorate. And they're holding more and more offices across the country. One statistic I found, 75 women currently hold statewide elected executive positions. That's about 24% of the 312 positions available. And we have more women in Congress than ever before. 83 women in the House and 22 in the Senate. Now that's roughly in the 20% percentage range. Needs to be better, but better than it's been. And there are 10 women serving in top-level cabinet positions and senior White House positions in the Trump administration. And so more women are coming out. Republicans actually have 3 brand new women candidates running for the Senate, in addition to 2 others who already hold elected office but are also either running for re-election or moving from the House to run for a Senate space. So I think that's a pretty good story. Globally, I was really surprised at some of the statistics I found from the UN. In June of 2016, the UN reports that 22.8% of all national parliamentarians are women. 11 serve as head of state, and 12 are serving as head of government. Now, that's pretty good. And this, to me, was a really interesting statistic. Rwanda had the highest number of women parliamentarians worldwide, 63.8% of seats in their lower house. That sounds like a pretty good number. And now there were only 2 countries over 50%. That was Rwanda and Bolivia at 53. But many more had reached 30%. 46 single or lower houses were composed of 30% or more women. And those are respectable, good numbers. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe we all have to work harder. But it's a positive story and one that we can build on. And given what Patty told us, it seems to me like we're gonna find those numbers even increasing. Obviously, obstacles still persist in the electoral arena, even as they do in business as well too. And there are many of the same things. You know, women always have to work harder than the men. They are always held to a higher standard. I know that from the law firm and law practice, and I'm sure that's true for women who are running the candidates. Patty will be able to speak to that, and certainly Donna. Opportunity, lack of business, social and political networks, negative cultural perceptions, persistent gender roles. We face those every day. You all face them, we've all faced them. Another one might be fear of public scrutiny. Gosh, I think that applies to men and women. Anybody running today is going to be just, the climate and the atmosphere is so toxic. Lack of experience or perceived lack of readiness, those are issues. And obviously campaign financing and funding. I mean, that's one of the biggest obstacles that women face. And that's where folks like Donna come in to raise all that money for good candidates. And obviously family obligations and family are things that women all face. These are obstacles and things that I know you all want to talk today about. So lots to be done, but it's a pretty good story. And so we have to just continue to work at it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, June. Really appreciate the positive outlook, talking about different levels and different sectors. And Bolivia and Rwanda, I mean, these are really outstanding examples. And if
Who knew?
Who knew? And if you scratch below the surface on these countries, the stories behind the success in these cases have to do with women who are in politics, encouraging more women to participate in politics and legislation. So there are solutions out there. So we're so happy, Donna, you've arrived just in time. But we will turn it over to you. We had some introductions earlier, and we're so glad that you could join us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am a self-appointed weather whip. When my younger sister called me this morning in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and said that it was snowing, I thought she was just, making it up. I thought she was trying to explain to me what I was about to confront. So I have to tell you a little secret. Anytime I see snow, I hesitate to leave my house, and then I drive as if I'm worried about the driver. So that was the first time in my 35 years of being in Washington, D.C. It took me almost an hour to get down North Capitol. But I'm here, I made it, and it's like being back at home. So thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here with all of my distinguished panelists. We still live in a world where women face an uneven playing field. And despite the fact that we're 3 years away here in this country from celebrating the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, we still have a long way to go before we level the playing field. And one of the big issues I think we face is that we don't have enough women running for office, enough women serving in government, enough women who are visible even in the academic sector, in the media. Well, recently we also have heard from Hollywood. They're now ready to join this what I call this electoral movement that we're about to witness. It's unacceptable for women to continue to lag behind in the area of politics and political leadership. We're still operating as a country with less than 4% of the American people choosing public service and running for public office. We have to change that, especially in light of what I believe to be the growing diversity and the growing need to see more women take their seats at the table and to begin to really open up those doors and improve the lot of women and girls throughout this country and the world. So I think some of the challenges, in addition to what June just mentioned and Patricia and others I was listening, is that we have to increase the visibility of women. Visibility is viability. One of the problems we see all the time when women seek statewide office or even the presidency is that we're still judged by things that honestly it's tough to change. People judge us by our hair. They judge us by the sound of our voice. They judge us based on whether or not they like us. We never go around and talk about, do we like this guy? Do we like the way he looked? Do we like the way he sounds? But somehow or another for female politicians, we get into the nitty-gritty details as opposed to, looking at their management skills, their leadership skills, their ability to transform society. So I think we're at this tipping point moment now when we see a great deal of women who are seeking public office. We have to give them the kind of support that they need in order to succeed. We have to treat them like we treat any other candidate. We have to judge them by their substance, by their ability to put forward solutions that will match the great challenges we face. And we have to give them the support they need in terms of financial support and the political support. Financial support is still difficult because many of our major donors like to put women through this extraordinary test of whether or not they can win. We often ask men, well, if you want to run, let's run, and then we'll see if we can make it up by advertisement, make it up by campaign appearance. But for women, we judge women by the fact that they can if they can raise $1 million in less than 6 months. I was on vacation just a few weeks ago, and one of my good friends, her daughter is running for Congress in Northern Virginia, and she was in a panic moment because she had not raised $1 million. And she announced in June. And I'm like, well, why don't you give yourself a year to raise $1 million? It's the first time you ever ran for office. But no, she felt as though in order to be viable, in order for people to take her candidacy seriously, she had to raise $1 million. Luckily, she crossed that hurdle, in large part because we were tired of listening to her and we all got on the phone. And the funny thing is that after she crossed the $1 million hurdle, then she called us back and she said, but I want contributions from all 50 states. And so I found myself on, practically New Year's Eve, right as I was about to get some Prosecco. I found myself calling friends in South Dakota and Kansas and Nebraska to put her over, not just $1 million, but now she wanted all 50 states. So again, where did that come from? I mean, I've never worked for a male candidate who felt like they had to have a contribution in a congressional race from all 50 states or $1 million in less than 6 months. So again, we put pressure, and then part of our issues is that we exclude ourselves. We put the burden on ourselves to be better. I once ran a campaign for someone who's still a member of Congress who didn't know if she was qualified. And I'm like, extremely qualified, superbly qualified. And she questioned my education because she didn't have a political science degree. I said, oh no, nobody wants a political science degree anymore. If you're running for office, they just want you to be competent. They want you to be good. And besides, you have a bachelor's degree in history, you have a master's degree in fine art. Now you have a law degree. Well, how many more degrees do you want? So again, we are qualified. We have enough women who I do believe can break through all of these so-called political barriers to win. But we just need more women in the political pipeline. So mentorship is very, very important. We have to find ways so that women can be in a position of having, support of other women. Part of the problem, of course, as many of you know in this room, is that we are the harshest judges of each other. And often we do not give women the kind of strategic support they need to mentor others. So with that, I'm going to shut up because in a few hours I'm returning to Georgetown, my 15th year, and I teach a course of women in American politics. I'm excited about it. But one of the reasons why I like to teach this course is because I believe that we have to empower young women at a very early age to start thinking about it. And our other big issue that we have to deal with is that women, we need to stop waiting until we're quote-unquote menopausal, postmenopausal before we seek office. We need to seek office as early as possible. I received my first appointment when I was in college down at LSU. I was appointed by the mayor of Baton Rouge, Pat Screen, to be on the Fair Housing Commission because I thought as a college student we didn't have good housing on or off campus. And I sought that position. And I often tell women who are working in campaigns, I said, look, even if you decide not to choose, to run for office one day, you must go ahead and apply yourself to being appointed to public office. So with that, I believe that we're in a moment. We're in a very good moment. I've never had so many phone calls and so many solicitations on my desk as I've seen over the last couple of months, as a growing number of women. Women I never thought would even seek public office, let alone ask for my advice. They're running, and I'm excited about it. And I hope come November 6, 2018, we can wake up that next morning on November 7 and say, wow, we did it. We did it. This was a record year. It's going to be more expansive than 1992, which was very expansive. This is going to be a record year of women, not just running, but winning office all across the country. So thank you for having me. And Bill, it's good to see you again. I noticed that your hair is still silver, and I put a little purple in mine. Just to stay in tune with my young people. This is LSU purple. Yeah. Well, I would have had black and gold with the Saints lost. So I'm back. Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you so much. What an uplifting panel, hey? We talked about positive changes on both sides of the aisle and internationally and right here in this room. So I think that's a good place to start with questions. All right, so we'll take them from the floor. We'll go one by one for now, and if there's a lot of questions, we'll do them in groups. So please.
Hello, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Shade Oshumugi. I'm a candidate for delegate in Maryland, District 26, which is the National Harbor area. I have a two-part question. I hear a lot about folks encouraging women to run and then also to be political operatives and create an opportunity for first-time candidates. One of the biggest struggles that we have on our team is finding folks who have experience to work at different levels of the campaign. So a lot of the energy that I saw after the Women's March last year were people who wanted to gravitate towards candidates that are already in the field and not necessarily new candidates. And so a lot of the political operatives are taken. And so what's your advice for making sure that we're all connected, those of us who are running for the first time, to folks who can really be the backbone of our campaigns to be successful? And your story about your friend's daughter who's running for Congress in Virginia really resonated with me about the financial aspect. Even on the state general assembly level, we get all of this pressure to raise a certain amount of money, and we just had our first campaign finance deadline. We did pretty well in our campaign. However, it's not just from the big donors. Some of the endorsers too, for what should be community organizations or advocacy groups, are telling us, oh, we're going to wait to see how your finances came back before we even consider endorsing you, even though we agree with all of your policies, stances, and they align with us. So what can we do to encourage it, to foster an environment where there's not so much pressure on the reaching a certain dollar amount? We've learned in the last year election that several people won, first-time candidates won with far less money than their incumbents were able to raise. So how can we fix that problem?
Thank you. I'm just going to repeat very briefly for those who are listening online. So a great question from a candidate. Good luck to you. On resourcing campaigns, particularly human resourcing campaigns for people who are entering politics for the first time, and fostering an environment where the fear, can we say, of campaign finance is not as much of a barrier, perhaps. So
we recently in Louisiana, Latoya Cantrell won her mayoral race. Now, granted, she was a city council member, but she was not the candidate of choice for the quote-unquote the business community and the political donor base. And she won largely by having a grassroots campaign. She distinguished herself by saying she was open, accessible, and that she would meet people in their neighborhood. She said, "Don't come to me, I'm coming to you, I'm coming to your neighborhood." So she won with a strong message of putting the communities first, the people first, and by going door to door. Now, there are many organizations that train campaign operatives, and I can tell you as somebody who knows a lot of unemployed people, okay, they're still looking, they're hungry. Emily's List trains people, they have a large list. The Wellstone Institute, and a lot of them they have a lot of young people who got involved at the grassroots level in the 2016 cycle, and they're eager to get involved again. So cast your net wide and see if you can get some of that talent. You also want to make sure in terms of go back and look at the history of the person who's held this position before, look at the endorsement process, look at what happened there, look at their donor base. Look and see if it came from, say, the business community. Did it come from academia? Depending on, National Harbor is a new, vibrant, strong area. And you have a lot of ways to raise money from labor and some other institutional players. So look at the institutional players and then look at the individual donors and see if you can tap into that as well. And remember, in the beginning, before the primary, you got to spend a lot of time getting to know the community, even if you born and raised there, you still got to get to know people, and you got to make sure that you can enlarge your base of support and to go out there and be very aggressive. Do not, this is not the time to be shy and reluctant to go out there and shake hands and kiss babies and do all other things. You got to get out there. They said where two or more gather, you need to be in the midst of these. And so I would go to Emily's List and see if they have a list of people in this area. DC is full of people with a lot of talent who are still looking. And not everybody's looking to make money on campaigns. Some people just want to get out there and prove their worth.
Thank you. I'm Lucy Getman, Executive Director of Women in Government. We work primarily with women state legislators, so I'm very glad that you're running. I'm wondering how our panelists might reflect on the different political dynamics of running at the state level as opposed to running for Congress. The money is different, the scrutiny may be different. I'd just be very interested, especially since literally half of the women members of Congress were state legislators first. What's different in your opinion about running for office at the state or local level?
Great question about the difference of running for office at state and local levels compared to national.
I'll take it. I'll start it. The majority of the women who attend our school, that's been their path. They have either been, serving on the local level, Board of Ed, City Council, and want to bump up, want to figure out how to, launch themselves into a state rep or state senate. But I've been seeing, so that has been the majority of the women who've attended our school. What I've seen this year are all these women who are, to Donna's point, incredibly qualified in their own respective fields. Many of them are lawyers, for instance, and decided, I'm mad, I marched, I'm gonna run for Congress, okay? Having no clue what it takes to, I'm smart, I'll get qualified. I can raise $5 million, but I have friends. And too busy to attend any campaign school, let alone ours. But now we're getting all these, hair on fire calls from women who are in the middle of a, really tough congressional race where every day is a bad revelation. Like, wow, my friends won't support me. They won't write a check. They don't want to be political. Help! Okay, so that's a really bad track, that we're seeing. And so that has been a frustration for me, because the thing that's so great about our school is it's going to save you from making all these expensive rookie mistakes that you're going to make when you run for the first time. We had someone I just read this morning was dropping out who said, wow, I didn't realize how hard this was going to be. And those of us who are political, you know how hard it is. It's the, sausage making and, aspects of the work. They look at somebody like Elizabeth Warren or Susan Collins on TV. I want to be that. I can be that. I can do that. But, when you dig down and see all it takes to be fabulous every day, not so much. It's hurting my heart, by the way. It's really been frustrating.
Yeah, I'll just make one little comment here. Most of the work that I do is on the federal level, so the candidates that I'm usually involved with are supporting our federal candidates. And, you know, one of the things we always say is all politics is local. But, you know, politics at the local level is really local. And so, to me, I think that's such an advantage for candidates on the local level, and that you all, you know, there's a built-in network of your friends, your neighbors, your church, all of the places where you can tap into to make your message known, to have visibility, and you've probably, as just a citizen in your community, have had plenty of time to be involved in things that have given you visibility. And then obviously you have to tap into your network of friends and people, and obviously their resources with various political parties and organizations on the local level. I think that is the best way to start in politics, is by being active, whether it's the school board, or if you make it to a city council, or if you're in a small town and you can be a part-time mayor or a city council person. That's a great way to start. And in fact, that is the best learning ground. I began, you know, life in political life working for the state legislature, and watched a lot of the people who were running for office in the state legislature, but they started, you know, in their communities because they cared about what was happening in their children's school. They cared about, you know, what was happening with the water system in town. It is great experience to have, and, you know, I think it's natural for women to start there and go forward.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Samira Daniels. I've been around different kinds of political venues. This is for Ms. Russo. I was really impressed with your presentation about your campaign school. And the thing is that, and Donna Brazil points to this also, that, you know, this is also an issue of culture within different parties. And I myself, you know, like, the thing is that the dissenter, or the person that, you know, is most qualified, also tends to be the dissenter, or should I say hold to, you know, viewpoints that are probably more substantive. And I wonder to what extent, you know, you deal with the culture of campaigns, because in so many of the ones I've seen even on a local level, it's this constant obsessive sort of obsession with, you know, each other and so forth. And I think that has to change, and I'm wondering to what extent, you know, what either you or Donna can speak to that, and how you would train, you know, how you would address that in your school.
Just for the online listeners, so that's a question about the culture within the parties and how that's affecting women's participation and turnout.
It's interesting working with Democratic and Republican women, unaffiliated women. I like to believe that our school creates the opportunity for women across the aisle to talk, to connect, because that's not happening anywhere. You know, we see this, you know, everybody's paralyzed. No one's afraid, you know, they refer to themselves as the enemy. We just, and Gabrielle can speak to this, we just kind of set the tone for the beginning of the week, and just say everyone has an equal voice here, everyone has a responsibility to speak up. The cultures of the party are very different. I am personally a Democrat. I have never known a campaign training, that I did not love. You know, my idea of a good time when I was very young was to road trip down here, to go to a DNC training with my girlfriends. That was my idea of a good time, okay? That's the Democratic model, pretty much. Republican women, not so much. I mean, when I have gone and spoken to Republican town chairs about the campaign school and the importance of training, they say to me, well, Patty, it's not that we don't discriminate against our women who are running, just really not that interested in training. How's that working out for you? Well, in varying degrees, it's working out, but really ultimately, that's really not how you build a party. And so what I love most about this school is, you know, women are much more apt, Democratic and Republican women, to check our egos at the door, You know, we're better at that. We're much more collaborative in our leadership style. I worked for the late, great Bella Abzug, where there were far fewer women in Congress at that time. And guess what? She was always turning to Millicent Fenwick and other Republican women to support pieces of legislation because she had no traction. And so that's what we do, in addition to providing exemplary training and then mentoring after you leave us, after the 5 days, is I believe that we're changing the culture and how the way in which we deliver our program and the way in which our students are able to interact and work together. We also have a case study component of our work. We throw in Democrats, Republicans into small groups. So everything you learn during the day, you incorporate it into the homework. At the end of the week, you have a presentation. So really, when you're in a small group and you're in Republican, Democrat, whatever, you want to win, right? You want to get in front of those Democratic and Republican judges on Friday, and you want your team to win. And I think, again, all this great work that we're doing on a bipartisan way, I think is really making an impact.
Just a footnote to Patty's comment, I would just add that for those of you who might lean Republican, there are things to take a look at there in terms of the RNC and some of the strategic initiatives that they are undertaking on women's engagement. So, you know, if they didn't appreciate it before, I think they're really appreciating it now. Obviously, the RNC has a very terrific young woman chairman in Ronna McDaniel, and she's got a woman-led leadership team over there, including her deputy chief of staff and deputy political director and director of strategic initiatives. They've got a Females in the Field series that they're highlighting, you know, in terms of regional directors, state directors, and organizing. They've got their federations around the country, and they're working with nonprofit organizations that empowering women's training. So go back to women.
Well, and then the good news is that we actually have one of our Rockstar graduates from the Women's Campaign School as one of their leaders, who I'm meeting with this afternoon. So, good to have you.
Well, I believe, again, that we have to break the culture that keep women behind. Culture is defined as a set of beliefs and traditions, and if a tradition no longer support our goals, including of you know, gaining equality, then we have to break with that tradition, and we have to change that culture. I remember growing up in the South that the folks in Louisiana looked to Texas for leadership because of Barbara Jordan and Richards. And now what you see across the South, and I'm proud to say this, I mean, Texas, they have a huge network of women. Annie's List, I've been down to help them launch that. And North Carolina have Lillian's List. And I think the only way we achieve parity and if we get more women in the political pipeline, I've never had a problem with getting more Republican women in the pipeline. I mean, Democratic women can't do it alone. Just like I always tell people, the black vote can't save the Democratic Party. Well, women, if we're going to achieve equality and achieve parity, we're going to have to find Republican women as well. There's some seats in this country that no matter how progressive you are, you don't stand a chance. It's a conservative seat, but so we're going to have to partner with conservative women and see if we can work with them. They ultimately will have to find their seats at the table as well. So I would hope that as we look to the future, and no longer go through what I call these stumbling steps, where we take 4 steps forward and then we have to take 8 steps backwards, that we find ways to change this culture so that, again, women in leadership roles are accepted, women in women in power, you know, will get the kind of respect that they deserve, so that we can break through the glass ceilings as we head toward 2020 and beyond.
Thank you so much for that question. There's several questions in the room. I just wanted to let you know that we are expecting the Congresswoman to stop by and she'll make closing remarks, and so we will be looking forward to that. I want to make sure that we at least hear the questions, so I will take 3 together. So 1, 2, and 3.
It's Mira H. from Congresswoman Gwen Moore's office. June, I'm really happy you brought up the case of Rwanda and how nearly 70% of their parliament is represented by women, because it presents a very interesting case study in the uproar that has ensued by men in this condition. And it's interesting how, when men comprise 70% of parliaments for Congress, the same uproar is not shared by women, so there are many lessons to be learned from that particular case, how to galvanize women and sort of motivate them to run and to harmonize around our issues. Similarly, in the European Parliament, last year or 2 years ago, the very first party, feminist party representative was elected, and there was all this uproar because now we have the feminist party being represented in European Parliament. But similarly, when male-dominated parties have leaded European Parliament, there wasn't this sort of backlash. So I just wanted to make that comment. But my question is, and I came in a little late, so you perhaps already mentioned this, but has there been any research, or can you present any insight to us on sort of gender discrimination in campaign donorship? And like maybe a donor will contribute more to a female candidate versus, or vice versa, more to a male candidate, and then that same donor contributes less to a woman candidate. I mean, we've seen that in Congress where perhaps a ranking membership, a ranking member will receive less money than a man on the same committee who gets more. So is there any trends or data that you've researched?
Thank you for your question. Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Emily Rodriguez. I'm with the National Democratic Institute. I'm a former candidate for state representative in Pennsylvania. And actually, it was just me. I'm so glad that you brought up violence against women who are trying to participate in politics. You guys are working on this. We're working on this too with the Not the Cost campaign. Tools exist for women who face this kind of violence, but I was wondering if you have any advice for women, even just kind of recognizing what's happening to them, because there's a lot of harassment that occurs that they might think is just part of the game. And so what advice do you have for women to recognize that this is happening because you're a woman and there is support for you out there?
Thank you. And sir.
All right. Well, good morning. My name is Nicholas Rubio, and I intern at the office of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I'm also the leader of the educational working group with United Nations Association. And I would like to know more about what I can do to further empower women in my group and to break the silence barrier that prevent them from further participating or engaging in the process of. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So just to sum up, we had a comment about backlash from men to Rwandan levels of participation, and gender discrimination with donors, violence against women in politics, how to recognize it and what to do, and what we can say male allies can do to help this cause. So please, where should we start? Maybe from this end of the table back, Donna?
Oh, just writing it all down. I think, again, I still believe that women lawmakers have to be aggressive when it comes to fundraising. Aggressive in the sense that they have to be upfront about the money that you need, because often what political donors will do is take a look at the race and say, well, this member is not in trouble, but this member is. And they also know that money equals power. By giving money to certain lawmakers, they know that that will empower that lawmaker to move up the so-called political ladder, because, as you well know, what male lawmakers often do is campaign for or raise money for individual candidates so that they can one day accrue political power. When you want to become whip, when you want to become caucus chair, often those individuals who are holding those positions are people who have gone out there and raised money. So I think you have to be very upfront with your fundraising folks that you need resources because you're helping down ballot candidates, or you need resources because you are, like I said, you are seeking a higher office or seeking a position within this institution that requires you to raise money for other candidates. And be upfront about it. And in the last election cycle, the one area that I never thought I could ever bridge was the fundraising. And once I got into it, I felt like, wow, this is just like asking people for votes. But you're just saying, I need your money. And I just want to add, I'm on the board of NDI. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for being here. I want to just say this. You are in a position to appoint women, if you can, to encourage women, to engage more women to get involved, to lift them up, and to give them a seat at the table, to be your co-director, your co-leader, and to give them a seat at the table. You're in that position, and that's one way to help women, is to recognize that they bring a certain set of skills and talents to the table, and that you need their support and their help. So that's what, and hopefully someone else will address violence, but I have as somebody who understands how technology has not been our quote unquote, it's been really tough for women, and especially in countries like Rwanda and other places where there's a growing backlash to the visibility of women in political power. We have to address this, we have to speak to it.
I second everything that Donna said, and it's hard to top that, and I'll just make a couple little comments, and that is, thank you for bringing that up. I found that statistic so interesting, and I'd love to hear more about that, and I'll go do a little interneting after this panel to learn more about that. I suspect you're right. I think that there is discrimination in the sense, and it's not so much that people want to discriminate, it's just that when you're raising money and you're making determinations about where your political action committee PAC money is going to go, you're going to look at where's your money best spent and who's got experience and what are the prospects, and they're just calculations you have to make on that. But women are tough, and women have to be aggressive, and everybody in this room has worked hard at getting where you're doing. So there's just no way around just going after it, being aggressive, doing it just like you would everything else that you do in your daily life. You're gonna just fight for it. Personally, I've not had any experience with regard to abuse and harassment and violence in politics. So I'm going to have to defer to international organizations like IFES and NDI and IRI and people who are really in those campaigns to really talk about that. But I agree. This online is a problem everywhere, in every aspect of life, and it's very unfortunate, and we've got to figure that one out because it's too difficult. And absolutely, you're a voice, speak out. Just do it. Be supportive of women candidates, just as you would men candidates. There's no reason to be, unequal and uneven, but support those women candidates. People that line up and align with your issues and your point of view and the way you want to see the world go. So you're a voice, and we need every other man in the world to need justice.
Just quickly, Rwanda, we had a woman years ago come to our school from Rwanda. They have a quota system in Rwanda, which skews the numbers. And this one woman was talking about what a wonderful opportunity it was for her and her sisters to be finally serving. They got there because men supported them to get them in these roles. Oh, here she is! Hello! Good morning. And so I would recommend that you take a look at a group called Representation 2020. It's Cynthia Terrell's group. Take a look at the work that they're doing. It's really groundbreaking and exciting. But the woman from Rwanda, our student, said that her frustration is that when she was appointed and subsequently able to serve, the man who was representing, had pushed for her, expected her to vote exactly the way he wanted her to vote. So not only was, she was there, but, he was getting 2 votes, or 4 votes, depending upon the, so I think we have to drill down and really see what's going on there. And I'm really happy NDI is here. Our partner, our international partner is the International Republican Institute, but I'm really thrilled to hear about your work, and that is definitely an issue that we, we work with our students to deal with. And welcome men! We need more men in the space, and so I'm really excited that you're here, and your level of consciousness is just such a breath of fresh air. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your comments. And the Rwanda case is really important. We started out the conversation today with Bill's remarks about the candidate Diana I can't pronounce her last name, Rwanda, whose images were manipulated and photoshopped when she ran for president. And so women's political participation is not a single drive forward. There are steps forward, there are steps backwards at all times. And having worked in Rwanda for years, I think what Patty's experience with her colleague is not uncommon. So on that, give the Congresswoman just a moment to catch your breath, but I wanted to throw a challenge out to you here this morning. Many of you are familiar faces now. You do come to these events and we're happy to see you. I'd like to suggest that next time around, the next time we meet in March, bring a male colleague with you, please. We're thrilled to have you here. But this is a joint effort and it's a common cause, and we would really like to see that diversity reflected in our groups. So throwing the challenge out there for you. I also wanted to say, again, this series is based around the development goals with the United Nations, and with each series there's different topical focuses. The group Women Thrive has put together a really excellent group of resources on this, and the materials are outside, so we encourage you to take a look at that. As well as at their website, and also to thank everyone that made it possible today to be here on the Congresswoman staff, as well as with IFES staff, Liz, Tazreen, and Bill, of course, for being present this morning. So with that, Congresswoman, if you're ready, we would like to hand the mic over to you for closing remarks. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Sitting next to my NDI friend, and I know NRI may be in the room as well, so forgive me. So I'm going to be a little feisty this morning. First of all, I'm delighted because I'm sandwiched in between the Judiciary Committee and the discussion on the continuing resolution and whether or not this government is going to remain open because a group of individuals do not see fit to act with humanity and dignity and respect men and women who are in desperate need for status. Those are our dreamers. So let me first of all say that, let me acknowledge my preceding staff, Abiola, who has been working with all of you. And I want to thank Isabella, and I want to say to all of you, I'm always coming. Unless there's something, I'm always coming. Please understand. I had to walk from the Capitol. I'm in the middle of a fight dealing with keeping the government open or closed. You're sitting here. I'm coming. Please know that. This is something that I've given birth to. So to keep calling me and saying, are you coming, you're coming, and right now I need to be in the Judiciary Committee. So please, can I get an understanding? Can I get an understanding, please? I need some love in here because women are in the mix. I am delighted to see Donna Brazil because she is the epitome of youthful long-standingness. How do I say that? That has stood in the gap on many firsts in her life, and I thank her for always being there for us. You're giving me empowerment because I will be going to Las Vegas, never for the casinos, but for the commemoration of the Women's March. And I will be talking about translate the second march. They're not having it in Washington, they're having it in Las Vegas. And I will be talking about transitioning and transforming and getting into the power base of America. For that is so much power. There's so much power in this room. There's so much power internationally among women that we must get into the power base now. And that is to make women's issue part of the power thinking. And what happens internationally is that as we're making, and this is in no way condescending, baby steps. My first confrontation was in the 90s with then Secretary Albright on the Bangladesh border as they were recovering and rescuing girls and semi-women, teens, from human trafficking whose families had sold them. That is the lowest category of powerlessness. The next was the engagement with the Afghan government, with then Chairman Karzai moving to be President Karzai, as they were writing the Constitution. Then members of Congress, including Carolyn Maloney and one or two others and myself, were advocating that women's rights should be in the Constitution, and you may not realize it, it is in the Afghanistan Constitution, and you should read it. But what does that mean? There was a period that came after that, after they elected women parliamentarians, where women were killed going back to their constituency, and they shut them down. They shut it down for girls going to school for a period of time as the Taliban began to rise up. So you have to have staying power. And the tools of gender equality and empowering women go along with the question of sustainable development and the tools being given, but I must weave in the United States because it looks as if some of you live here. The census, how appalling. Our census is now going to ask you to designate, are there citizens in the house or no citizens in the house? And that was not the Founding Fathers' basic desire. It was a simple count. Who is here? As individuals, because this organization does not lobby in the United States, as individuals, you must connect the empowerment of women here with our sisters overseas. And somebody needs to write letters and say it's an abomination. You're mixing apples and oranges. You're taking evilness of your contempt for the basic core values of America, dealing with the Statute of Liberties, bring us your worn, your impoverished to this nation, and now intermingling with foreign policy, with accounting, etc. So I hope as you are here that you're inspired to connect with your sisters on gender equality by acting on your own. I know that there may be staffers here, and so I encourage you to get with your members. Carol Maloney should be leading that effort on dealing with this ridiculous part of the census that will be asking that question. So I think it is important that we continue to educate internationally, that we insist on aspects of voter education, and let me mind my manners to thank June and Patricia for their work, and of course my alma mater, the Women's Campaign School. I want to come back there. I'll come back. I'll come back and speak. I mean, I would be most inspired. And I'll call you and say I'm on my way. All right. But I think if there is anything that I'd like to leave you with, there has to be an aggressiveness about women, and it must be connected to transcend women's power to power. And so one of the things that were helpful to the Afghan women was, one, the embrace of other women, but also educating them in the skills and the tools that could put them in a place to demand power, to demand protection. So we had to come back in to protect them. And we lost some women elected officials who were killed. And so that frightens others. When I first started going to the continent, which to my dismay, and as I was looking through my clips, Chairwoman Brazil, last night, I had the headline, which I was glad that it had made a headline, that Jackson Lee calls on Secretary Tillerson to do the job of the Secretary of State. I'm deviating here just for a moment, but it's an international issue. That if you have someone that allows words like those S-hole countries to get into the public sphere, and since we're all connected by technology, it is appropriate for the Secretary of State to go to the mic in the Secretary of State and indicate that no policy has changed as it relates to the continent, South and Central America, and that America still chooses to be in alliance with the outstanding nations that believe in democracy around the world. Because when you do that, you impact women as well. And the reason I was saying that, when I first started going to Africa, I met the market women. If you go back now, they're big-time business people, but they were in the market. That was the power, more so than government. They were the economic power. They owned all the little shops, or they weren't shops, they were various spots in the market. They had the economy. They had the handkerchief of money. There was not any real financial system as it has grown to be. And so the way to create the empowerment is to accept where they are and give them the tools to take what is now and to move it to the next level. You have to understand what the electoral process is to demand change or demand that it is what it should be, or that it becomes what it should be. NDI does that absolutely wonderfully, particularly in their work of oversight over elections, which I've been pleased to participate in, but as well their training. So I think I can conclude by saying that this is a very important session. These sessions are continuously important, but I can't have you sit here and not act on your own or act on something that translates out of this room. And so I encourage, well, I can say it, not you, but I would encourage that as you come to these sessions, if you're not staff, if you make your own cheat sheet of members, that before you leave the Capitol, you will go by to talk about gender equality internationally. You will meet the staff. You will indicate that I just came from a meeting. No, I'm not, but I just came from a meeting and I desired to make sure that I talk to a number of staff regarding the importance of international gender equality and importance of political empowerment of women. And so as you look at the appropriations, the importance of focusing on that funding or the support of the United Nations, which is not illegal, to be able to speak to a list that you make for yourselves. We are not telling you who to go to. If you're in this room and you've been inspired, or whatever sessions we've had, how then will you translate it? Maybe you'll choose the members on the Foreign Affairs Committee. But we must move this power stick forward because we're really in a climate here and perceived around the world as steps backwards and not steps forward. I'm appalled at the conditions in Turkey. I'm supporting the democratic movements in Iran. The people of Venezuela must be saved, not for any political party, but for their own democratic rights. Women are at the core of this in many instances. And when I say women, it may not be the elected women. It may be the women who are seeking to empower themselves for their children. So I thank you for allowing me to speak around and alongside of the issue. But I hope that you will find that your presence here is more vital today, not only in the backdrop of the world's conflicts, but in the backdrop of the large mountain that we have to climb here in the United States. Never one that I thought I'd have to climb. Even as I agree or disagree with presidents who've been elected and unelected, Republicans and Democrats. I've never had this mountain that looks almost immovable, but for me, never. And it should be for you, never. And it should be for women, never. And it should be for your sisters who need you, never. Never say that it is immovable. Always say there's something we can do. This effort of dealing with the international work is that commitment that the mountain is not immovable. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time to be here this morning with us. It was a powerful session, and I'm really honored to have been able to be a part of it. So thank all of you again, and we will be seeing you in March to talk about harmful practices. And yeah, please do take some literature on your way out, and have a great day. Thank you. Thank you.